Here in the Northern Rockies, dark winter months are outlasted in basements, dens, and nooks where kindred souls gather together to share intel, swap fly patterns, and relive the memories from seasons past. This gathering spot, known locally as the February Room, is the inspiration for this podcast. No matter the season, the door is always open to those with a fly fishing story to tell. Brought to you by CD Fishing USA, the North American distributor for composite development fly rods and accessories. 40 years of Kiwi ingenuity and graphite technology, now available at cd-fishing.us or your local CD USA dealer. Follow us on Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook. And remember to go fishing. Here's your host, the Carnobs, and this is the February Room.
Currently, I have a welder fabricating a piece for my ancient raft, a carpenter building a deck for my 1980 skiff, and I'm on the hunt for a used drift boat to replace my 20-year-old vessel before she sinks to the depths of the Black. As we all know, BOAT is an acronym for Bust Out Another 1,000, and this time of year is a scramble to get our used fleets together for the brunt of fishing season. My guest today is kind of like me. He's a budget boat guy, and this is Clint Whitley from the Western Hunting Hub podcast, who was gracious enough to have us on his show. So we're returning the favor, and we're looking forward to chatting with you. Clint, welcome to the February Room.
Awesome. Glad to be here. Glad chatting with you. And again, just like we were saying before, it's fun to connect with like-minded people and learn from others and just have a good conversation. We're blessed to be able to talk fishing and hunting, so why not do it over a way we can share and we all enjoy.
Yeah, absolutely, man. You had me on your hunting podcast, so I thought we'd invite you over to our fishing podcast. And you are you've been playing around with paddlefish, and that's a really interesting species that we have here in Montana. They're also known as a spoonbill. They're in the same family as a sturgeon. And as the name suggests, they have a long snout or paddle, and they're found throughout the Mississippi River system, from the Gulf of Mexico to the Missouri and Yellowstone basins up here in Montana, and then over by you in the Dakotas. And they are prized for their eggs and their fillets. And I have never caught one. But Lauren has, and she talks about that often. So I would love to hear a paddle fishing story, Clint.
You bet. So one thing that kind of intrigued me is just how ancient of an animal they are. I mean, these things have been around a long time. Like, there's another distant relative, I think, over in China, looks similar, but they don't look like anything else in the water. They are a true, when you think of the Discovery show River Monsters or whatever that is, that it's a river monster. It's huge, it's big. They don't feed the same way any other fish does. They're filter feeders. They got a big gaping mouth with a big gill flap on it. That big spoon bill on the front has got all kinds of weird sending vibes through the water to find where the food is, and yeah, that's my good. I swear I do got a biology degree, but I can't describe that anymore. So well,
no, that's plenty, man.
Yeah, yeah. No, the experience I've had with them is on the Missouri River in South Dakota, and a lot of the times you see that happening mainly kind of further south along the river, but we do have those opportunities in kind of on the Missouri, Montana, North Dakota, South Dakota. So I was fortunate enough to draw one of the first tags of a new season here in South Dakota. That was probably 10 years ago, and there was some big fish in there. There's state records in there. That the state record was about to be broken in that season, and I think it keeps getting broke every year or so since then. So I think the state record's like 133 pounds. So we're talking some big fish, and I ended up with a 69-pound paddlefish, and that was like setting the hook on a rock. And I always think that a rock that starts to pull,
nice.
You feel like you set, and when you pull up and you're like, oh, that thing's not moving, big fish or snag. And that thing just starts pulling back. So I had taken a little hiatus from South Dakota. I was in Colorado for 8-9 years, and so I was eligible to come back and do some paddle fishing, but it just wasn't the same. I could only do like on the Nebraska border, and it just wasn't a tag worth driving for. I didn't want to do it. It wasn't the deal. And I am talking tags because it is a lottery system in South Dakota. So been back in South Dakota now 2 years. In this first year, since I had a preference point, I was able to draw the tag in kind of one of the more popular areas to fish for paddlefish. So I went and took that little 4-hour drive over to Yankton, South Dakota, where paddle fishing happens. And I even think there was a MeatEater episode of not Ranella on there, but one of the other guys in the boat fishing in that exact same spot, exact same season I was fishing. So you can check that out, I'm sure, and see what that all looks like, or Google Yankton, South Dakota paddle fishing. You can see rows of people there fishing with their big long rods. And I hadn't done it in years, but I had remembered, okay, I need some 3 to 5, maybe 6 ounce weights, depends on what the flow is, coming out of the dam. And we're fishing right below the dam there. And the goal is to kind of get up as close to the dam as possible. So I got there before sunrise, and there's a season when that kicks off. Opening day at a certain time. And even every day you can't fish, I think it's right at sunrise, and you got to stop at sunset. So I was there at before dark and was drinking my coffee, found a spot on the rocks, so this will work. Kind of got everything all rigged up, and I was already pretty ready. Had a pretty big rod, I think it was but not long. It's one of them big catfishing rods, probably 8 foot long or so. And I figured that would work. And I had another one that was just a touch longer. It'd be a backup. And as soon as that time opened up, it's kind of cool because it was still dark out, but legal fishing time. All you hear is these reels going zzz out, and not a splash, but when a 5-6 ounce weight hits the water, it's like throwing a rock, and it gains that extra velocity and then sucks down into that water, and you hear that just up and down the banks. So then it was snagging time. So we have that big weight. We've got a 2-aught hook on there, treble hook. That's as big as we can go in South Dakota, and the hook's just anywhere from a foot to 3 foot above the weight. That's a whole thing on technique on how you want to do it, and you just start ripping. If you want a oblique workout, that is it. You just stand to the side and rip and rip and rip, and you go to your sore. And I figured that day I fished from opening till I had to end at 5 o'clock. I did not stop at all. There was, except for one little break to run and get a new rod, which I had to. But I just kept going and going and going. I figured if I don't have a hook in the line, I'm not catching a fish at all. So I cast that thing out and out and out. My side was getting raw from the fishing pole. So a lot of guys will wrap a towel and some duct tape around the base. There's a little tip that you might consider, because your side will get raw. Even though it was cold out and I had a jacket on, your side will get raw. And so as that rod is so long, it sticks on your hip, and you need to counter a little counter lever with it as you're doing your big draw to snag. And just kept going and going. I watched people sit down and take breaks. Not going to happen. I ate my lunch standing up as that line was getting out there, and just kept ripping, and nothing. I think I had a hit here and there. Bunch of frustrating snags, and you lose tackle like crazy. You got to bring a boatload of tackle, and broke one rod that was a cheaper one. Finally said, screw it, I'm watching these other people with these 10-foot poles, and I was like, screw it, I'm going to the bait shop. I'm gonna go buy a new rod. Went to the bait shop, didn't even care what it costs, but this big surf rod, 10 foot long, it's huge. They are huge. And put my reel on it. First cast, fish. And after that, I think I caught.
No way.
Yes. I'm not kidding you. I'm not kidding you. It was 9-10 fish within 2 hours after that, and it was just because of the length of rod and the setup. And I guess my first rods probably wasn't 8 foot. It was probably only like 6.5. But the difference in a snagging rod that works versus didn't work. One was longer, so you get that giant draw of that line zipping through the water for quite a bit longer. Before, I was probably just dragging it over them. It didn't have enough velocity to hook into them. It just didn't work. So I didn't find that out till halfway through the day, and I figured how many did I figured I did like 800 casts in that day. Something like that, 600 or 800 casts. I calculated how long it took me to do a cast, reel in, and it was just nonstop. So first fish hooked up into a couple decent ones. The only issue I have with the whole deal is just that those fish get hooked over and over again, and sometimes it's kind of a bummer to see them get kind of tore up, because you're looking for one that's over a slot limit or under a slot limit, and the ones under a slot limit are just like, yeah, that'll eat, it'll be fine, but some are really small and you feel bad taking them. And the ones in the slot are like the perfect size to take, but you can't keep them. And then the ones above are kind of hard to come by. So, and you got people out in the boat that are pulling them in left and right. So it was a great day. Caught a bunch. I think that's how you kind of seen my first, or my posts on Instagram of some of those paddlefish. And took a picture with a couple. Caught one really nice one, about half an inch underneath the slot. But awesome day. Really sore afterwards, but an absolute riot. Those fish it's seriously like setting a hook on a rock that bites back, and it is probably one of my favorite types of fishing. I know you got a lot of fly fishing in your podcast there, but man, paddle fishing is where it's at. It's got its own little following, and it's a great way to mix up a whole different kind of fishing experience. If you don't have the money to go do deep sea fishing, or you just can't do it very often, and that's the way to go. It's like since we're in the middle of the country right here in South Dakota, it gives you that big fish opportunity. So it's a good time.
Well, there's a group of fly fishing guides here that I know that go over and do that. They've been going over and doing that the last few years, and I haven't got the invite to go yet, but I really want to go. And our rod sponsor, CD, actually they make, and we now carry a surf rod that would be perfect for that. You can change the length of it from 8, 10, or 12 feet. And it's a big beastly surf rod. So I'm going to go do it. As I mentioned, Lauren got one in the state of Missouri several years ago, and she still raves about it. And, they cooked it up and ate the caviar and everything. And I've never eaten it. Have you had a chance to try it, even though you didn't get to keep one because you were outside the slot limit?
Yeah, I've only kept one, and it was that 69-pounder. And at the time, I was working in Game Fish Park's office, so I took it into I asked one of the biologists. He didn't really work with some of the fish, but it's like, how old is this fish? It's like it's 50 plus years old. It's like it's an old fish. So you're thinking about. I was thinking about that when I was eating it. It's been a while since I had it. My wild game culinary skills have improved quite a bit since then. So I want to give it another shot. The caviar, I did keep it. I took one gallon bag. Probably could have filled up another one or two. There were so many eggs, but I got it home and I didn't know what I was doing with that. So the whole separating of everything that's connected to it, I didn't know how to do that. Definitely want to be prepared next time to see if in our spring season, once I draw that tag, to be able to figure out how you do that. Because from what I understand, that stuff's more valuable than the sturgeon caviar. So yeah, I want to give it another shot. I remember it not being too bad. If I remember correctly, I was kind of connecting it to like a swordfish fillet or a steak, something kind of similar.
Right. Yeah, Lauren did that for a TV show called Dead Meat, and they cooked it up, and that's with a chef named Scott from California, and he prepared it all up, and that episode's probably out there too. You could find that one. It was pretty cool. But so is the spring season? Is that when the spawning run is for those fish?
I believe so. Yeah, because they still are in the fall. Man, I don't want to get too far into the biology of that because I'm going to get it wrong. But in the fall there, they are still congregating at the dam there. And there's another example of, issues with dams. And you see that in the Pacific Northwest there with the salmon. But they've got so many issues there with the dams. It just blocks it. And that's where they congregate. But we've got one spring season in one location, and that's when that is, and then a fall season in October is where that in Yankton. So you got to go a little further north on the river to hit that spring season. Why that is, the department is determined to spring and one fall, I don't really know. I just go and catch them.
Okay. I wonder, I'd be interested. There's not I got this Fishes of Montana app, and I did some snooping around here before our conversation to try to kind of better educate myself, and I couldn't find a lot of information on, where they're running up from. Are they coming all the way from, the Midwest up the Mississippi system, or are these kind of like more resident fish that move up during the spawn just in their own states, or what? So I'd be interested to talk to a paddlefish biologist and learn more about it.
Yeah, because it gets totally different once you get to Yankton, because then you got 4 dams in South Dakota, and then wasn't there a total of 7 dams on the Missouri? Once you get up to you guys, something like that, where that's going to change everything. You got all those dams in there. Maybe there's 4 total. Oh man, this was fifth grade geography. I don't remember.
Yeah, no, we're not gonna hold your feet to the fire there.
I would wonder the same thing. Like, what's there, if anybody's done like distribution studies? That's what it's called in wildlife, but what the migration is on those, that'd be interesting.
Yeah, it sure would. So switching gears here, you mentioned that you're kind of a budget boat guy, as I am too. I'm prepping a new to me skiff right now to set up primarily for targeting pike. Tell me about your boat and what you use it for.
So I've kind of always had a boat just like hanging out at my house. And when I was in Colorado, somebody said, here, you can have this, and if you store it and you kind of make it work. Like, okay, that was great. So for, 5-6 years, I had a little 14-foot aluminum boat, Johnson motor that was from 1970s and didn't really do a whole lot with it other than get the motor running and go cruising around some of the small lakes of western Colorado to try and catch some walleyes and whatever was there. So getting back to South Dakota, I had the opportunity to pick up like a $500 16-foot V-hull aluminum boat. I just call it a boat because I don't even know what's on the side of it. I don't remember because it doesn't matter. I don't really care. It floats, right. and it has a boat motor that's just a little older than me. So it's got a 1983 Mercury 25 horse motor on it. So buddy offered it to me for $500. Like, why the heck not? I gotta leave this one in Colorado. So I'm gonna take this one. This be something great. I got a 4-year-old and I've got a 1-month-old. So my hunting time is going to be a little more difficult. My shed hunting in the spring is going to be a little more difficult. I didn't even buy a turkey tag this season. I got to find a way to kind of engage my kids in the outdoors a little bit more, and fishing from a boat is probably one of those ways. It's going to be a good avenue to do that. So that's my focus. I've always just kind of had them. I'd be careful with the term boat guy. I wouldn't say I'm a huge boat guy. I'm not driving around in a $50,000 Lund but I am a budget boat guy. I'm a budget whatever. I don't like paying full price for anything. And so this opportunity kind of popped up, and so I grabbed it, and in the process of moving and buying a house and getting into a house, just in the last 2 months, I finally said, all right, this is my goal. This is my winter project, my late winter, early spring project. Get this thing ready for ice out. And, got it out. Was for the first time, hadn't even seen if this motor ran, but I figured the boat's worth $500 either way. So got it kind of figured out, and had a maiden voyage the other day. It was a complete disaster. Complete disaster. So yeah, the kind of the first things I was looking at, if you want me to get into that, is
yeah, for sure.
I figured the motor. I was like, okay, this is the biggest expense in the whole thing. I got a 25 horse motor. I am not a grease monkey by any mind. I do my oil in my vehicles. I really try to not dive into an engine, but I can do a little bit more than average, let's say. The small motor stuff, I kind of enjoy. It's kind of a challenge, but I like it to be simple. And these old motors they're super heavy. They're pretty simple for the most part, and they're workhorses. They've been around since the 70s and 80s, and they still are working and on a lot of small guys' watercraft. So they're bomb-proof. They can handle a little dirty fuel going through them. It can handle a couple of seasons or many seasons without being winterized, and doesn't make them last any longer, but they will run for you. So I figured, all right, this motor I got to figure out is this thing going to work or not, and that's going to determine this boat going to be a thing. So hooked up my tank. I tried the old water muffs on the motor, and it's like, I don't even know. I've never used these before. I don't know if this is really getting water into it to make sure it's staying cool. So I did the whole 55-gallon drum with water in it. It's always a good route to go. I had that anyway. So I hooked that up, and like second pull, the thing started running. It's like, oh, this is sweet. This thing's going to work.
Nice.
I had no idea where the kill switch was. I was looking, where's the kill switch? Where's the kill switch? And I knew it was on the end of the throttle handle there, but it wasn't obvious, and it was barely even a button. So I ended up flooding it a couple of times just to shut it off, because I was like, I don't, what the heck? Why can't I shut this thing off? So again, I told you I'm not a grease monkey, but I can figure things out eventually. And so that thing started going. I went and looked at a couple of my big things. All right, spark plugs. I went and swapped those out for $350 a piece. Why not? Get rid of those. Put new ones in, so it's going to be firing good. Pulled off the carburetor. This is not always like the easiest, but it's not that big of a deal. A couple of screws or bolts, pull out the carburetor, and I just take some brake cleaner or carburetor cleaner. It's basically the same thing, and just hose it down in that stuff. Get everything loosened up, make sure it's clean. Old fuel out, make sure the float in the carburetor is actually floating and not sticking, because that'll get you. If there's any, I can't ever identify where the little jets are or anything, but just shoves them more brake cleaner, the better. Just carb cleaner, just hit it hard. So that's what I did, put it all back together. Then kind of noticed as I started up, it's like, oh, it's not spitting water like it should. All right, I found out one of the big things is that impeller, the water pump that's down in the lower unit. So that was easy. Kind of pulled off through YouTube, watched a couple of videos, could never find, and I think that's one of the problems, could never find the exact same guy doing a video with the same motor. So everything was kind of the same, but not really. There was a couple little things that were goofier, and I think that's what you run into a lot of the time. But it was all really the same sort of thing. Even on the new motors, I got that impeller in there that's pretty easy. So I pulled off that bottom unit, is 4 bolts. Pulled that off, and out come a piece of copper pipe that pumps water. There's the shaft, and then the shifter. Like, okay, we pulled that out, put it in my bench vise, and decide why not. I'll order a new impeller for the thing. That was just 4 screws where that little impeller is that shoots the water up to the engine to cool it off, and replace that. Had a little issue with the shifter because that thing was just pressure stuck in there with pressure. It popped up, and I had a whole thing talking with a boat mechanic in town and chatting with him. It's like, hey, I don't know how to fix this. The shifter popped out, and he was looking at, really kind guy, looking at part diagrams online, trying to walk me through it. And it's like, man, I don't know why that won't go down in there. 10 minutes later, I just pounded on a little bit, and down it went. So there's a lot of little issues that you can run into along the way. I'm always nervous about taking things apart, because I'm going to screw this up, not be able to put it back together. So I was taking a couple of pictures along the way, had those YouTube videos to reference to see what their motor looked like in case I forgot to take a certain picture. That would be huge. I would recommend people do is take pictures, even with your vehicles. You're taking something apart, you forget about which bolt size goes where, and then you're going to end up in trouble trying to find a certain bolt for a certain thing that is not possible. So, yeah, got that all put back together. I'm glad I replaced that impeller. Now I hooked it back up with spitting water perfectly. Figured, all right, good to go. A couple legal things I took care of after that were make sure I had fire extinguisher, sound device of some sort. Didn't worry about lights yet because I'm not going out at dark. Let's see, got my throwable, my PFD or 2. Got a new one for the kid so that it fits the 4-year-old. And I think that's the basics. I had a battery. I threw a battery in, and I had a trolling motor that someone had given me. It's pretty nice Minn Kota, pretty good size one that they had given it to me, and I found the paperwork of 2005 is when that was bought, and I chatted with my buddy and said, yeah, Dad never used that. Never used it. It's brand new. So I threw on a little piece of wood on the front there to be able to mount the trolling motor on. Glad I did that for the disastrous trip out that I had. Put that on, ran the controller back to the back. Seats were in. I took out the other thing I'd done to this boat is I had stripped out all the old flooring. It was like all framed in there, rotting, falling apart. There's beer cans underneath. There's all kinds of stuff throughout this boat from the previous owner. So just a bunch
old
of
Oli cans from 1970.
Yeah, it was a mess.
Full tabs.
Oh yeah, yeah. Took the old ropes off of there. So I already have, let's see, $500 into the boat. I went and bought a new battery. That was a big one, like $120. I just bought a Walmart battery. I didn't care. I'm not buying anything too big. Couple of ropes for the anchor, which was also, I'm really glad I did that for another reason. A dock rope, and then yeah, that was about it. Just a couple little things. So I'm probably into this whole thing with those boat parts and everything, $700. Let's just say. Figured that would be a good place to start. I was watching all these videos. I wanted to. All these videos of people doing boat renovations and painting the outside, painting the inside. It's like, God, I'd love to do that. But you know how expensive marine paint is on the outside? And the prep work for that, not going to happen. I want to do the inside. I want to put in a floor in the thing. It's just, I'm going to do all that eventually, but I got to figure out if this thing's going to even work first. Let's just get it on the water, and I'm going to be kind of prideful in the budget I spend on this. I'm going to have a nice cheap boat. I could easily drop, like you said, thousands of bucks into it and make it a sweet rig. I could throw a live well in there. I could put all kinds of electronics on it and do all kinds of cool stuff. But I'm going to keep it kind of budget friendly. I did the trailer lights. I had to do that as well. Make sure I was legal there. And I went for the full $55 submersible one. So I said, screw it. I'm going to get the good ones. Submersible. I'm sure I'm going to hit it on a dock one day and bust that whole light anyway. So I'm going to replace it. But they're at least submersible to start with, and we'll go with that.
Well, it sounds like you're undertaking a very similar project to the one I'm on, the one I'm working on. So I got this 14-foot smoker craft from 1981, which I discovered when I went and titled it. And this boat was gifted to me by a buddy of mine that just didn't use it and didn't have room for it. And he has a trolling motor for it and an old Mercury 110 9.8 horsepower, which is perfect for what I want because we have some motor power restrictions and stuff around here on some of the rivers. And the motor I took in, unlike you, I can tell already you're way more, even though you claim you're not a grease monkey, you know a lot more than I do. I'm in that below average category when it comes to that. So I just went and took the motor in and then my buddy is upfitting it with that casting fishing deck that you mentioned and a lean bar, and then he runs that closed cell foam that you can buy for the floor and then for the casting deck, so you have better footing, and that stuff's cheap. So yeah, we're gonna line it out with that, and hopefully it's good to go. You touched on something that reminded me of a mistake that I made with another motor that I have. When you put it in that 50-gallon bucket to test it at your house full of water, the first time I did that, I didn't have a 50-gallon bucket, so I just used what I had, and I didn't get enough of the shaft submerged, and I actually burned out the impeller, burned out the water pump. And so that was like my first attempt at outboard ownership. I've always been the guy that like will just tag along with my buddies that had boats because I didn't want to mess with them. I'm like, hey, I'll row all day. I'll swap you out. I'll take you on a river row trip, and in exchange for going out on your boat. Yeah, that's a good point that you made there. And make sure that shaft is submerged enough so you don't burn out your water pump right out of the gate.
Yeah, and one little trick I found, again, thanks YouTube, was I just threw a little lithium grease in the pump there. So like when there's no water in there initially and it's got to fire up, you don't ruin the little impeller right off the gate. It's got a little bit of grease to be able to get going and not wear down and create some bad marks. So yeah, that was kind of a cool little thing to figure out. I'm proud of myself. It was one of those that makes you kind of glad you figured it out. And
yeah, nice job.
Yeah, because there's plenty of other projects where I did it, and it cost me double what I just could have had someone else do it for. So I've learned my lesson elsewhere.
Well, my buddies and I were just talking about this yesterday. One of them is that we were fishing with. One of them's from Butte, and there's we don't have a lot of options in Missoula as far as mechanics for small motors. There's just not a lot of shops around that have a very great reputation. And they're really backed up, and you got to wait a year to get your motor back, and finding those just kind of small one-man operation kind of do it all kind of types that can fix that stuff for you is key. And there's apparently a bunch of those in Butte, but I did meet one guy here that I was able to take my motor to, who did a good job on it. And then I, hit him up for another project, and he was like, "Oh, I'm too busy, man. I just do this on the side." So, if you can't do it yourself like you're way better off finding somebody that knows what they're doing, and, maybe bartering with them or something, to save yourself some money rather than, taking it to a dealer, where you're going to pay a lot of money and wait around, to get your cheap old motor back, your Johnson that's been running for 40 years.
Yeah, and the saga ain't done for me yet either. I think I got it figured out, but then there's the whole disaster of its maiden voyage. So I went out, and I got Pactola Reservoir, which is in the Black Hills of South Dakota. It's 15 minutes from my house. Really quick trip. So I think that's perfect. Gonna take the kid, kind of give my wife a break from the other kid, or the 1-month-old. Well, not from the 1-month-old, but get a break for a bit there. Say, well, I'll take the dog with. Why not? She's been a good dog. Might as well she'll sit up in front or wherever. So we backed the boat down and because there's no dock in yet. It's a little early. The docks aren't in. So back that down in. Parking area is a little higher up, so you got to drive back up a road and park your vehicle, and then they got a nice little trail to walk back down to where you park your boat. So I did that, walked back down. It's full of water. It's like, oh, I forgot the plug. This is the most rookie mistake ever. Stupid plug is floating around in there, so I'm now in the boat, and as you're putting weight in the boat, now the water's coming in quicker, and rooting around in the back. Was like, I know this. I left the plug right in here somewhere. It's right next to where to plug it in, but with 6 inches of water, now it's floating around all over the place. Tackle boxes are getting full of water. Life jackets, our sweatshirts that I needed for the evening for the kid, keep him warm, and myself, are wet. Our snacks wet. It's all wet. Everything's floating around there. Find the plug, shove it in there. Okay. All right, Ty, we got to go get the truck again. He's so excited, and now he's bummed why we got to go get the truck and load it up again. Go get the truck, load the boat back up. My wheels and tires on the trailer are pushing it. I need to buy new tires, so I'm not ending up in a bigger issue, and that's probably a safety issue there too, because they just got them itty bitty little tires. If I blow one of those, it could be a bad deal. So with all the weight of that water, I saw those little tires cracking, and I was like, oh gosh, I'm gonna blow a tire here too, and get that water drained slowly. I couldn't believe how long that took to drain. There's so much water in there. Got it drained, got things kind of picked back up. It's like, all right, we're going to give this another go. And we had to wait our turn again because there's a few other boats around, so I'm looking like an idiot trying to not make the biggest rookie mistake there is, at least forgetting your plug. And back it down in there, put it in again. And I'm glad I had the anchor because there's no boat dock to hook to, so threw the anchor out on shore, and it's just kind of floating there. And we walked back down from we're at the parking area, get in, and starts right up. Off I go. It's cruising. It sounds really good. It's like, okay, Ty, we're gonna open this thing up, see what it can do. And no idea how fast that would go. Boat cruises just beautifully. Engine was running just so beautifully. It sounded good. It started up good. And it's like, oh, now he really wanted to catch a fish. So of course I had to throw in the fishing poles and get to a back little bay, not too far from the docks. Like, I get back in my mind, it's like, I got to stay kind of close just in case. Got to stay close, and get back on that bay and shut the big motor off kind of quick. And I think that was my issue. Put the trolling motor down and cruise back into the bay, and it's like, oh geez, this bay just keeps going. Let's buzz up there with the big motor quick, see if we can't find any of these panfish. And didn't start. It didn't start. It's like, oh, I think I flooded it when I shut it off. Even though I hit the kill switch, it still may have flooded. And that boat motor, there's another thing I got to learn on it, is when it's flooded, is there a way to drain that out without having to wait? Or I can't figure it out. And we just had a bunch of snow and cold weather, so I haven't even figured it out since then. So we ended up turning around with the trolling motor, and I cruised the whole way back with a little trolling motor, and figured I better just get closer and closer. I got a 4-year-old, a dog, and there's kind of some high winds and a storm coming, so I figured I better not be an idiot and cut the fishing trip short. It's getting dark. All the things that probably could have gone wrong, but ended up being able to get back to the truck, and he was all upset because he wanted to catch a fish, and we didn't catch a fish, and I'm trying to dock the boat, and I'm doing all that myself, and so it was a bit of a disaster. But I always say over and over again that some of your greatest, fondest memories are your time in misery. And it's the worst. The weather's the worst. There was a time my wife and I think 2 of us went into one of those little 14-foot boats onto a very popular lake on July 4th. It was the dumbest thing ever. We were going fishing on July 4th on a very popular boating lake where there's boats cruising around all over the place. And we could have got killed that day. There was so many boats cruising around, and dumb me in college thinking, yeah, let's go fishing on Lake Madison.
Well, awesome, man. Well, good luck with the project, and I'll let you know when I have my first gaff here, when I get my new boat out, because it's just bound to happen. You're gonna have issues. I've never been on any boat, no matter the cost of it, that didn't have some issues at one point or another.
Yeah, and I'm keeping in mind the purpose of having this boat. That's what's helping me run my budget. Sure, I could dig a little deeper and go put some money into it here and there, but I don't want to. I want to just keep this as a not a money dump. I really want to keep that purpose of this is out to get my kid outside and for the next 10 years, maybe we upgrade by then, but just to get us out to enjoy the outdoors. And that's where I really started. I primarily hunt now. I don't fish near as much, but where I started is fishing on the Missouri River with my grandpa and my dad. I remember the 2-hour drive, looking back at the boat and seeing the trolling motor power cable that runs down, the curly power cable that runs down from the top motor. And that sounds weird, but that image of that wire bouncing up and down on the boat as we're cruising to the lake is associated with all kinds of excitement and all these fishing memories, that image. So as I was looking in my rearview mirror the other day, seeing that little wire bounce, just it was a little nostalgic to be able to see that. I was like, okay, I'm gonna create that similar memory. So he's not gonna associate the wire to that, but he's gonna associate this boat and things to Dad taking me out fishing and catching our fish. So that's kind of where I had started, is on the Missouri River. Also little lakes throughout eastern South Dakota catching perch and things, and there's some of those little memories there that I gotta work hard to pass on to my kids, because he's 4 now, so you start to remember things, and he's past the
Yep.
he's so impressionable. It scares the crap out of me because he'll pick up things that are just unreal. Pick on things.
Oh yeah, they don't miss a thing, man. They don't miss a thing. And I can't wait to get my kids out on our boat. It's going to be really fun up for the area lakes too, for the white fishing thing and lake trout and pike and bass, and it's going to be so much fun. Trying to take them in the drift boat and go have success on these trout rivers is that's not a kid-friendly event.
Right.
Thank you so much for joining us. The podcast is called the Western Hunting Hub Podcast. It's on the Waypoint Podcast Network, and you can follow Clint and the podcast at Western Hunting Hub on Instagram. Correct?
Yep, that's correct. I like to just provide an educational platform, a learning platform, similar to yours. Just talk about hunting, and there's a lot of good things happening there.
Go to thefebruaryroom.com, where you can access a complete library of our podcast and read more about our guests, their fishing stories, and favorite fly patterns. We're always looking for exceptional fly fishing yarns, and if you have one to spin, shoot us an email at info@thefebruaryroom.com. The February Room is always free, but if you feel like throwing a nickel in the pond, we appreciate any additional listener support. For companies and individuals interested in sponsorship opportunities, please contact us for our media kit. Thanks for stopping by the February Room, and we'll see you down here next week.